Ever crack open a book, right? And it's like ancient, over 2,000 years old. But then, bam, it's got advice that's still killer today.
I know, right?
That's what we're doing, diving into Sun Tzu's The Art of War,
Classic.
straight from ancient China. But don't think it's just for, like, battlefields and stuff. This is about strategy for business, negotiations.
Everyday life, even.
Exactly.
Look, it's wild how this one book, it's influenced, like, everyone. Military minds, CEOs.
People really want that edge, huh?
The art of war. They're looking for that strategic advantage, yeah.
And Sun Tzu, he doesn't mess around,
Hmm.
jumps right in. 5 constant factors, he calls them.
Okay.
Moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, and then method and discipline. Says you got to consider all 5 every single time, no matter what the situation is. So moral law, I got to be honest, I'm picturing like warrior monks meditating.
Right. Not quite what you'd expect in a war manual.
Says, what's the deal here?
It's more practical.
Yeah.
So Sun Tzu, he wrote, the moral law causes the people to be in complete accord with their ruler. It's about unity. That shared purpose between, a leader and their team, values, goals, got to be on the same page.
Otherwise, you're already sunk.
Exactly. Already fighting an uphill battle, you're right.
So less about being a saint, more about everyone pulling in the same direction.
That's the gist of it.
Gotcha. Okay, but then there's heaven. Now this one sounds a little too mystical for me, even with the monks.
Right. Not about divine intervention, promise.
Okay, good to know.
Sun Tzu, when he says heaven, he's talking about context. Heaven signifies night and day, cold and heat, times and seasons. He's saying, look at the bigger picture.
The timing of things.
The environment, even the weather. Seriously. And you use it.
So like if you were launching a product, you wouldn't do it when the market's a dumpster fire.
Exactly. Or even just think about picking the right time for a tough conversation.
Right. Timing is everything.
It all ties in.
Okay, so we've got, what's the goal? That's moral law. We got timing, that's heaven. Earth, though. Is this about digging ditches? What are we talking here?
Laughs. I wish it were that simple. Okay,
Mhm.
so, quote, Earth comprises distances, great and small, danger and security, open ground and narrow passes, the chances of life and death. He's talking about terrain, but like all kinds of terrain.
Not just the physical kind.
Knowing the landscape, yes, but also what are the obstacles? What are the opportunities?
Yeah, for businesses, knowing your competitors, right? Knowing your own weaknesses even.
Being realistic, exactly.
Okay, this is making a lot more sense now. So that brings us to, well, the leader, the commander. What's Sun Tzu's take on what makes a good one?
He gets specific, lays out virtues. The commander stands for the virtues of wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness. It's not just about being tough.
It's more than just being able to fight.
Way more. Wisdom, sincerity, look at that. Even benevolence he lists.
Whoa, kindness and war. Didn't see that coming.
It's about balance, strength, but understanding too.
Leading with your head and your heart.
Exactly. And last but not least, Sun Tzu talks about method and discipline, which sounds like a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, isn't that just like common sense?
You'd think so. But with the art of war, there's always another layer.
I'm starting to notice that, yeah.
So he defines it as this: the marshaling of the army in its proper subdivisions, the graduations of rank among the officers, the maintenance of roads by which supplies may reach the army, and the control of military expenditure.
So it's about like sweating the small stuff.
The details, yeah. The planning, logistics, all of that. Can't just have a fancy strategy and that's it.
Because even the best idea, if you execute it poorly,
It all falls apart.
yeah, it makes you think, how many businesses failed, not because their idea was bad, but because they didn't have the follow-through?
Totally. It's a good lesson for any of us, really. Pay attention to the details.
Okay, so that's our foundation, the 5 constant factors, Sun Tzu style. But how do we actually use this stuff to win without fighting?
Now that is where it gets interesting. See, Sun Tzu, he was all about achieving victory, ideally, before any swords even come out.
Winning before the fight even starts. Okay, now you've got my attention. Tell me more.
It's all about strategy, maneuvering so that you're already winning before things get messy.
Okay, that does sound ideal. Less messy is good.
Sun Tzu wrote, and I love this, supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. Imagine that. You've won, they know it.
And nobody even had to draw a sword.
Exactly. But how do you actually do that, right?
Yeah, that's the part I'm wondering about. What are the actual moves here?
So one way is disrupting the enemy's plans.
Mess with them so they can't even think straight.
Basically, you create confusion, uncertainty, Suddenly, their whole strategy, it's shaky.
Like that saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road.
Any road will get you there, right?
Yeah.
Except here, you're making sure your opponent is the lost one.
Ah, I like how that works. So what, keep them guessing?
And off balance, yeah. Makes it harder for them to, unite their forces, too. That's another key thing Sun Tzu talks about.
Divide and conquer, right? Classic strategy, even I know that one.
It's a classic for a reason. You don't want to fight their A game all at once.
So pick them apart bit by bit.
You got it. Isolate them, hit them where they're weak, and suddenly they don't look so tough anymore.
This is some next level stuff. We're
Yeah.
talking mind games, strategy,
Yeah.
all before the fight even starts.
Sun Tzu was all about that pre-fight prep, but he hasn't stopped there. He also talks about attacking supply lines, morale, that kind of thing.
The stuff that keeps an army going, even if they're not on the front lines.
Right. Attack that, and suddenly even the bravest soldiers, they start to crumble.
Their resources are depleted, their support system is shaky, they're starting to doubt themselves.
So fighting spirit takes a hit, exactly, and that can be just as effective as any direct attack, sometimes even more so.
It's like you're not just fighting their army, you're fighting their entire ability to wage war.
You're cutting off the head, the heart, and the lifeblood all at once.
Brutal, but effective. You know, it's funny how these ideas, they work even outside of, like, actual war.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, imagine a big business negotiation, right? Or even just a personal disagreement that's gotten out of hand. Disrupting plans, sowing confusion, hitting them where it hurts. Those tactics are timeless.
Sun Tzu was way ahead of his time. He understood the core of strategy, and that never really changes, no matter what the playing field is.
It's about knowing the game, knowing your opponent, and knowing how to use all of that to your advantage. But then Sun Tzu, he throws this curveball at us. He says, all warfare is based on deception. And I gotta say, that one makes me a little uneasy.
I get it. It does have a bit of a shady connotation, but I think it's important to understand what he meant by that.
Okay, because deception, it does sound a little,
Dishonorable.
yeah. Like we're talking about lying here. What's the deal?
He's not talking about being malicious or, breaking your word. It's more about shaping perceptions. Think of it like you're creating an illusion to gain an advantage.
Okay, so not outright lying, but being strategic with the truth.
Yeah. Exactly. Like Sun Tzu gives this example, right? He says, hence, when able to attack, we must seem unable. You're playing possum a little.
So when you're strong, you act weak
Yeah.
to lure them into a false sense of security.
Exactly. Or you might feign disorder, make them think you're in chaos, when really, it's a trap.
Wow, sneaky. But effective, I guess.
It's all about playing the game strategically, like
Yeah.
poker. Right. You don't show your hand right away. Keep the other guy guessing.
I can see that. But just to be clear, there's a line, right, between like strategic maneuvering and just being a jerk.
Oh, absolutely. And I think Sun Tzu would agree with that. True mastery, it's about using these tactics ethically and responsibly.
So you're not just winning, you're winning with honor.
Exactly. Integrity matters, even in the middle of a conflict.
Well said. Okay, so we've got
Oh.
deception, but not the bad kind, the strategic kind.
Mm.
What else did Sun Tzu have up his sleeve when it came to, winning these strategic battles?
He was big on adapting, on being like water, flowing around obstacles and never staying stuck in one form.
Oh, I like that. Because in the real world, things rarely go exactly according to plan, right?
Never. And that's where this idea comes in. He said, military tactics are like unto water. For water in its natural course runs away from high places and hastens downwards. It's about, first of all, knowing the terrain, of course.
Right, the lay of the land,
Yeah.
both literally and.
And metaphorically.
Mm.
Knowing what you're up against, who you're dealing with, but then it's about being flexible enough to change course when you need to.
Which is tough. Sometimes you just want to stick to the plan,
Sticking to the plan is good until it's not, and that's where experience, intuition, all that comes in. Knowing when to hold them, knowing when to fold them, as they say.
So it's about constantly reevaluating the situation.
Absolutely. See what your opponent's doing, and then adjust your own strategy accordingly. You got to stay one step ahead.
And honestly, isn't that true for everything? Business, relationships, even just getting through a crazy day.
Adaptability is key.
Couldn't agree more. But, there's this other side to Sun Tzu that I find fascinating. So much to unpack with this guy, right? We've got strategy, we've got adaptability, that whole deception angle.
Yeah.
What else did Sun Tzu have up his sleeve?
This might surprise you, but he was really into the human side of things, like leadership, not just tactics.
Really? Because I got to say, touchy-feely isn't exactly the vibe I get from a war manual.
You'd be surprised. He writes, "Regard your soldiers as your children, and they will follow you into the deepest valleys. Look upon them as your own beloved sons, and they will stand by you even unto death."
Okay, that's not what I was expecting. So he's saying treat your people right.
He's saying it's more than just barking orders. It's about earning their trust, their loyalty,
I agree.
even their affection, yeah.
Because if they believe in you, they'll fight harder for you.
A leader who inspires that kind of devotion, Sun Tzu would say they've already won half the battle. Absolutely.
It's true, though. Think about it. The best leaders, whether it's business, whatever, they're not just smart. They know how to connect with people.
Exactly. They're competent, yeah, but they've also got that heart that makes all the difference.
Huge difference. Speaking of which, Sun Tzu was also big on knowing your enemy, right? Like really knowing them.
Oh, absolutely. And he gets into the nitty-gritty of it, too. Talks about 5 types of spies: native, inside, double, expendable, and converted.
5, there's a whole system for this. I'm guessing converted is the most hardcore.
That was his favorite, for sure. Means you take an enemy spy and you turn them. They're working for you now.
Talk about high stakes. I bet those guys were worth their weight in gold. What kind of info could they provide?
The best kind. Enemy plans, morale, heck, even insights into how their leader thinks. It's like having a window into their war room.
The secret weapon, but it's a person. And all the info they bring, it's like you're just playing chess, but you can see their next 5 moves.
Exactly. Which brings us to a bigger point. Even if we're not, ancient spies, information is key.
Always good to do your homework.
Yeah. No matter what you're doing, market research, sizing up your competition, even just having good conversations, asking the right questions.
It's all about gathering intel, making sure you've got the full picture.
Sun Tzu would be proud, I think. That's what he was all about. Knowing yourself, knowing your opponent.
And using all of that to come out on top. Well, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? Ancient battlefields, too.
To modern day boardrooms, everyday life.
It's wild how it all connects, right?
Yeah.
Sun Tzu's Art of War. Sure, it's about war, but really it's about strategy. And that's something we can all use a little more of.
Absolutely. No matter what battle we're facing.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'll leave you with this. Think about your own life, your own challenges. Where could you use a little Art of War wisdom? Where could you use a little strategy to achieve a more decisive victory?
Something to ponder, for sure.